Hey everybody, and welcome to the Green Witch Homestead. It is officially time to plant out everything else. Mother's Day weekend is here, so all of our warm summer crops can finally go into the ground. We talk a lot about starting your seeds in succession, making sure that you're not having things starting inside that can't go out too soon, and making sure that you're having enough time for things that can go out sooner started. Things like broccoli, cabbages, onions, all those things you start in the middle of winter, January, February time, because they can go out into the garden sooner. Tomatoes and peppers get started usually around March because they go out now, and then pretty much everything else gets started by seed outside. All of my squash I started a couple weeks ago outside in the trays, and now everything is going into the garden. Things like beans, okra, corn, carrots, all the root vegetables will all get directly planted into the garden by seed. Today we're going to be up potting and transplanting. I have a lot of different plants in a lot of different sizes of growth because I do sell at market. These are some tray peppers that I started. These are jalapenos. These are bell peppers. And I just started them in here because I had some extra seeds to sow. These guys are only a couple weeks old and they're getting transplanted up for the first time to bulk out a little bit for sale. I've got some younger tomatoes over here, same thing. And then those are my different flowers and things that I'm planting in my bed. I've got over here, these are some of our fancy breed squash. I believe we've got, these are Illinois squash. And then these are our pumpkins, which are going to be transplanted up into these 4-inch pots for selling purposes. I try to make sure that I have plants for sale all the way up until mid-July. People will still like to buy plants that they can put in their garden that late in the season. I also have some that will go in a little later to give us a later harvest for the market garden. And that's one of the biggest things to remember when you are market gardening. You want to make sure that you have a good selection of product available for your customers throughout the season. You don't want all of your tomatoes out at 2 markets and then never have any tomatoes again for the rest of the season. It's really going to disappoint your customers. You have to keep in mind they're used to a grocery store where they can get these any time of the year. So a farmer's market is still going to be seasonal. You're not going to get everything all season long, but to spread it out, to grow your plants in succession, plant some now, plant some a little later so that they're growing at different rates, is going to help you as a seller. Now I'm sure you all really want to dive into the garden, and I promise I will be putting up a official full garden tour on Wednesday. But I'm going to try and kind of not show as much of it because I don't want to give too much away. One of the biggest things I'm going to be doing today is giving you guys some tips and tricks on how to sow smaller seeds when you're sowing them directly into the ground. My favorite method for sowing carrots is actually one that I learned from Mallory from the Quebec Homestead, and it's a really neat trick. So I've actually done 2 versions. I've done 1 row of carrots that I just seeded directly by the shake method, and then we're going to do one today using this solution method so that we can see the difference as they grow. You guys might remember this rack. We did a video on it a couple months ago about building it for using as a curing rack, and it will still be used for that in the fall. But I had this brilliant idea that in the springtime, when it's not in use, we are going to have it out here on our front part where our roadway is. And this is going to be our plant stand where we can offer plants and things for sale. As the season progresses, we'll have vegetables that are for sale up here. So the house is like 30 feet away and we do have a camera on here, so we're not too worried about theft. But I will have a lot of extra produce this year since our markets are only once a week. But I just wanted to show it off. I am going to paint it. It is rough wood right now, so I'm going to paint it probably white just to make it stand out a little bit better. Remember our victory garden? Corn is in that big patch there. We've got our double row of potatoes, and then we need a double row of carrots and beets. So this first row here, I've got beets in the front half and carrots in the back, and then I'm going to be doing this row in the same fashion, but I'm going to plant them differently. I'm going to use the solution method for planting the carrots so that we can compare the rows side by side as they grow to see which one's better. And then we'll be doing beans and some type of bush bean or legume here, and then we'll be moving on to tomatoes and peppers. The shake method of seeding, this is the beet row, and as you can see, they're very, very tightly clumped together. I will thin some of these out as they grow, and that's okay for me because I like to eat the beet greens as well. But the carrots, however, it's the same thing. As you can see, the carrots are coming up over here, and they're extremely thick. The thing with carrots is even if you're being extremely careful shaking them out, you're gonna get so many seeds that you're gonna have them come up kind of looking like that, where they look kind of like grass. The problem with that is that if you don't thin them, they're gonna overcrowd and you're gonna get small carrots. A lot of people really don't like thinning plants. In truth, it's very tedious work. So this is why we're gonna try this solution method that Mallory taught me. So for making this paste, it is cornstarch and water. And the basic measurements are, for every cup of water, you need 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. The other thing is to soak your seeds. So you basically are going to pre-soak your carrot seeds. You just put them in a jar with some water, let them sit overnight, and then strain some of the water off, and then let them just kind of stay damp in the jar, and they will start germination process. You do not have to do this water method. You can skip it. I like to do it for 2 reasons. 1, that's how Mallory showed me, and 2, it helps to guarantee a higher germination rate. So I have a smaller jar that I had prepped a couple days ago where the seeds are already starting to germinate, and that's the one we're going to use today. So it's very important that you remember to use cornstarch, not baking soda, not baking powder. It has to be cornstarch. I'm doing a 2-cup batch right now. So I'm using 2 cups warm water and 4 tablespoons of cornstarch. You just give this a good stir. It'll take a second for the cornstarch to kind of dissolve in there. Once you have your cornstarch and water mixed, then you're going to put it to your pot and you're going to put the temperature on kind of a medium-low, watching it carefully, stirring it. You do not want to bring it to a boil, but you want to bring that heat up to activate the cornstarch and get it to thicken. So this is the consistency you're going for. You want it to be kind of like a runny pudding. And then you just dump your seeds into that and give it a good stir. You see how the seeds are all suspended in there and they're separated? This is perfect. So what you do now is you're going to put this into a Ziploc baggie and you're literally going to just pipe it out into the garden. This is the fun part. So you can use Ziploc baggies. I got these really nifty piping bags. You just put it in a bag that you can trim the tip off of, and then you would just squeeze a line down the row in the garden. I'm gonna go show you how we put them out into the garden. I prepped 3 piping bags with the cornstarch mix in it. That should be enough to do the rows that I'm doing today. As tempting as it may be to pre-prep these and store them, I would not recommend it. This is a live seed, and there's no guarantee that if you were to store these that they're going to survive very long. So prep what you need to plant. If you have a little extra, that's fine. I'm going to be doing several different areas for carrots. We do a lot of carrots on our homestead. It's one of our favorite vegetables. I never grow enough. It's also one of the best things to sell at the market. So we grow a lot of carrots. I do not have high hopes for the carrots that are going into the Victory Gardens. This is a first year for these gardens, and the soil around here is not very good. It's very clumpy, it's very clayey. That will improve over time as we add new compost and softer soil. Eventually it'll grow nice carrots, which is why I'm growing some in the raised beds. So we're gonna walk over to the bed and that I've got prepped, and I'm gonna show you kind of some of what I've done to prep it and how these seed bags work. So one of the very important things about doing carrots is that you want a very loose soil. It needs to be very well draining, and it needs to have a very low clay content because they don't like to have to deal with resistance in the soil. So to help make sure that you get those nice, long, picture-perfect straight carrots, you really want to break up your soil. I like to do a 50-50 of garden soil and peat moss, and then I will usually add a 10-pound bag of play sand to each of my 6-foot by 3-foot raised beds. This is the garden bed that I'm going to be doing the carrots in, and I've already prepped the soil. As you can see, I've given it a good soak down. I'm gonna let this dry out at the top just a smidge. I've got all my rows done, and what I do is I just take a stick that's about the length of my bed and I just place it and I press it down into the soil. And I do mine every 3 inches. And now for the fun part. Take your little carrot seed bag, snip the tip off, just like that, and then you just draw a line down your rows. And yes, I know what it looks like. My husband reminded me many times with many different jokes. So go ahead and make your jokes now, get it out, but this method is really, really helpful. Remember to try and do this in the cooler weather. As it gets hot, it comes out a little faster than you'd expect. But see how nice and neatly spaced all of those carrot seeds are? So now that our carrots are in the rows and everything's piped nicely, I'm just going to take a rake and very lightly just cover them over with soil, give them a good water, and they're good to go. The nice thing about the cornstarch is it's going to help prevent movement from heavy rains, so you don't have to cover your bed. It's going to give moisture to the carrot seeds, as well as a little bit of nutrients from the cornstarch itself, so that you don't have to worry about them drying out. It's going to help with your germination rate, and it's going to space them nicely, so you shouldn't have to thin too much. The other great thing about this method is that it is universal. So you can use this no matter how you plant your carrots. If you're planting them in raised beds, if you're planting them in potters, if you're planting them into the victory garden in the ground, this method will work for any of those. It makes it so much easier, and I highly recommend you give it a try. Again, I learned it from Mallory at Quebec Homestead. I will have a link to her channel and that video in the comment section below. I recommend going and checking it out. She does some amazing things with carrots. I have carrot envy of her carrots. She has been working her property and her land. She does all of her gardening in the ground, so don't think that you have to do carrots in a raised bed. It is possible to do them in the ground. It does just take a little bit more work. Make sure you go over and check her out. Give her a shout out down in the comments. Tell her that I sent you. I hope you guys are following along on the victory gardens. Let me know how far you are if you are doing your own victory garden. Now we've got the potatoes in, the cabbages are in, carrots and beets are in, and we'll be moving on to bush beans, tomatoes, and peppers really soon. So make sure that you're tuning in. Every Sunday we should be uploading farm updates and victory garden information, and I'm gonna try and do garden tours on Wednesdays to keep you guys updated and posted. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, guys. Leave a comment down below to say hello, and remember, get your hands dirty.